My dear friends, there is a truth as old as time, yet too often forgotten. When a soul does not know its own worth, its words tremble, its voice weakens, and its message becomes clouded. But when you love yourself, when you embrace your flaws, honor your strengths, and treat your spirit with gentleness, you step into every conversation with a fullness that cannot be mistaken. Communication is not just the sharing of words, it is the meeting of hearts. And hearts that are empty, neglected, or wounded often spill confusion instead of clarity, silence instead of honesty, bitterness instead of kindness. A heart that has been nourished with self-love speaks with grace. It does not shout to be heard, because it already knows it is worthy of listening. When you love yourself, you no longer fear honesty. You can say what you mean, because you are not bound by the need to be accepted at all costs. You can listen, truly listen, because you are not threatened by the voice of another. Self-love gives you the courage to speak truth without cruelty and to hear truth without breaking. Many of us try to build bridges with words while neglecting the foundation of self-respect. But when you know your own value, you do not build walls of defensiveness, you build doors of understanding. You speak not to wound but to connect, not to win but to grow. Your love for yourself sets the rhythm of the dance, and others follow your lead into kindness, patience, and clarity. The one who knows their own worth does not beg for love, does not grasp at attention, does not twist their tongue to please. They speak in wholeness, and in doing so, they invite wholeness from others. Self-love becomes the gentle thread that weaves honesty into affection, trust into dialogue, and harmony into the spaces where two souls meet. My beloved ones, let us stay a while with this thought, for it is not a light thing, not a passing whisper, but a deep river that deserves our attention. To understand how self-love improves communication in relationships, we must first understand what happens when self-love is absent. A person who does not honor themselves often searches for validation in the voices of others. They measure their worth by the approval they receive, the attention given, the affection bestowed. In this hunger, their words are not free but chained to fear. They speak not to express but to be accepted, and in doing so, their communication becomes distorted. When the self has not been embraced, conversations are heavy with insecurity. A simple question becomes a wound, a pause becomes rejection. Silence feels like abandonment. The lack of self-love colors every word, every gesture, every look, and what should be an exchange of care becomes a battlefield of doubt. Yet when a person stands rooted in their own love, when they have looked in the mirror and found a friend staring back, their words no longer tremble under the weight of fear. They carry themselves into dialogue with dignity, with steadiness, and with truth. It is not arrogance nor pride to love yourself. It is a quiet recognition of your humanity, a deep bow to the miracle of your existence. And when you carry this recognition into your relationships, you free others as well. You show them through the way you speak and the way you listen, that it is possible to be both strong and gentle, both honest and compassionate. Think of the times when you have spoken from a place of insecurity. The words may have spilled out too quickly, anxious to be heard, desperate to cover the silence. Or perhaps they were withheld, trapped in the cage of fear, unspoken because you did not trust that your truth would be accepted. In both cases, the message was lost not because you had nothing to say, but because you had not given yourself permission to speak freely. Self-love is that permission. It whispers to you, you are worthy of being heard. You are enough. And when you believe that, your voice changes. It no longer strains for approval. It rings with clarity. It carries respect both for yourself and for the person before you. In this way, self-love becomes the invisible companion in every conversation. Consider also the art of listening. Listening is not merely waiting for your turn to speak. It is not nodding while your mind rehearses the next sentence. Listening is the opening of your heart to the heart of another. But if you do not love yourself, if you are filled with self-doubt, then the voice of another can feel like a threat. A word of criticism pierces too deeply. A disagreement feels like rejection. Instead of listening, you are defending, preparing your shield, building your wall. Yet when you are rooted in self-love, you can hear with openness, because your worth is not fragile. It does not shatter at the sound of another's truth. Self-love allows you to hold space for others without losing yourself. It teaches you that another's perspective does not diminish your own. It reminds you that to hear "I disagree" does not mean "I do not value you." In this way, communication becomes a bridge instead of a barrier. You cross into understanding, because you are not afraid of being misunderstood. There is power in the pause between words, in the silence that comes before a response. A person without self-love fills that pause with fear, assuming the worst, rushing to defend, desperate to fill the emptiness. But a person who knows their own worth can sit in that silence unafraid. They can wait, they can breathe, they can give the conversation space to unfold. That patience is born from self-trust, and it is one of the greatest gifts you can bring to any relationship. We often speak of love as something we give away. We imagine it flowing outward from our hearts to another's. But if the well within is dry, what then do we offer? Empty words. Hollow promises, half-truths wrapped in desperation. To love another fully, you must first be full yourself. Self-love fills your well, so that your words are not begged from scarcity but offered from abundance. You communicate not to grasp but to share. Imagine two people in conversation, both grounded in self-love. There is no need for masks, no hunger for validation. They can say, "This hurt me," without fear of abandonment. They can say, "I need space," without guilt. They can say, "I love you," not as a plea to be loved in return but as a gift freely given. Their dialogue is not a battlefield but a garden where words are seeds planted in trust and tended with care. Now imagine a relationship where self-love is absent. One person's insecurity demands constant reassurance. The other feels burdened, misunderstood, perhaps even suffocated. Words become weapons sharpened by fear. Silence becomes punishment. Affection is measured, rationed, withheld. The bond weakens, not because love is absent, but because self-love is missing. For without it, every word spoken is weighed down by hidden need, by unspoken fear, by silent doubt. Self-love transforms conflict as well. No relationship escapes disagreement. We are, each of us, carrying our own histories, our own wounds, our own ways of seeing the world. But when you approach conflict with self-love, you do not enter as a warrior ready to conquer. You enter as a peacemaker, ready to understand. You can say, I hear you. Even when you do not agree, you can say, I value this relationship more than winning this argument. That is the strength self-love brings. It does not demand victory, it seeks harmony. The one who practices self-love does not rely on manipulation to be heard. They do not shout to drown out another's voice, nor do they silence themselves to keep the peace. They find the balance between expression and compassion. They know that their voice matters, but so does the voice across from them. They speak, they listen, and in that rhythm, true connection is born. Think of the tenderness you offer a child learning to speak, stumbling over words, uncertain in tone. You do not rush them, you do not shame them, you do not dismiss them. You encourage, you listen, you smile with patience. That same tenderness belongs in every relationship, but it begins with how you treat yourself. If you shame your own voice, you will unconsciously shame the voices around you. If you rush your own truth, you will rush others as well. But if you grant yourself patience, forgiveness, and kindness, you will extend it naturally in every conversation you enter. Self-love teaches you to speak without masks. Many wear the mask of humor to hide their pain, the mask of silence to hide their fear, the mask of anger to hide their sorrow. But masks keep us from being known, and communication thrives only in truth. To remove your mask is to risk vulnerability, but self-love cushions that risk. It tells you, even if they do not accept me, I accept myself. And from that place you can speak honestly, listen openly, and connect deeply. The gift of self-love is not only in what you say, but in what you no longer need to say. You no longer beg, please see me, because you already see yourself. You no longer plead, please love me, because you already hold love within. You no longer ask, am I enough, because you know that you are. This freedom unclutters your words, strips away the desperation, and leaves only what is true. In this way, self-love transforms relationships into sanctuaries. Communication is no longer about survival, but about growth. No longer about seeking worth, but about sharing joy. No longer about filling emptiness, but about celebrating abundance. And when both people in a relationship come to the table full of self-love, their words weave a tapestry of honesty, respect, and compassion that no storm can easily tear apart. Now, to some, this might sound like a distant dream, a beauty too far to reach. But self-love is not a destination, it is a practice. It is in the small moments, the quiet choices, the whispered affirmations. It is in choosing not to speak harshly to yourself when you make a mistake. It is in choosing to rest when you are weary instead of pushing yourself to exhaustion. It is in saying no when your heart means no, and yes when your spirit means yes. Each act of self-love strengthens your voice, steadies your heart, and prepares you for the conversations that matter most. So when you next find yourself in dialogue with a friend, a partner, a parent, a child, pause and listen first to your own voice. Ask yourself, am I speaking from love or from fear? Am I listening with openness or with judgment? Am I seeking to connect or to defend? And in that pause, let self-love guide you. For it is the compass that points toward clarity, compassion, and truth. The world hungers for relationships built not on need but on wholeness. Relationships where words are not chains but wings, not weapons but bridges. And the secret to such relationships is not hidden in the other's behavior, not buried in their choices, but alive in the way you love yourself. The more deeply you honor your own soul, the more freely you can honor the souls of others. The more gently you speak to yourself, the more gently you can speak to others. The more courageously you listen to your own truth, the more courageously you can listen to theirs. And so, with every word you speak, with every silence you hold, with every moment of listening, let your self-love shine through. For in loving yourself, you teach others how to love you. In honoring your own voice, you honor the sacred act of communication. And in doing so, you weave relationships not of dependency, not of fear, but of truth, respect, and enduring love. There is a quiet power in learning to be at home with yourself, a power that spills into every word you speak and every silence you hold. Too often we imagine communication as a tool to persuade, to explain, to convince. Yet communication is first a reflection of how we dwell with our own hearts. If within you there is turmoil, if within you there is neglect, then that unrest will find its way into your words. You will speak with an edge that cuts when you mean to comfort, or with a hesitation that hides the truth when honesty is needed most. But when you care for yourself, when you tend to your spirit as you would a cherished garden, your words bloom differently. They are not pressed out in desperation but rise up in clarity. They are not sharpened by fear but softened by compassion. In this way, self-love is not only a private practice but a gift that enriches every connection you hold. There are those who believe that self-love is selfish, that to turn inward is to abandon the needs of others, yet it is the opposite. To neglect yourself is to enter relationships with an emptiness that cries to be filled. You lean too heavily on the words of another, you miss your affection as rejection, you grasp too tightly to approval. This creates weight, a heaviness in communication that others begin to feel. But when you honor yourself, you come not as a beggar but as a giver, offering presence, attention, and patience because you are not desperate to receive them first. Think of the person who knows their worth. They do not rush to defend every criticism because they know they are more than a single mistake. They do not crumble at disagreement because they do not require unanimous approval to feel whole. They do not shout to be heard because they know the truth of their voice whether or not it is echoed back. That steadiness changes every conversation. It invites openness instead of defensiveness, trust instead of suspicion, peace instead of tension. We have all felt the difference between speaking with someone who is grounded and someone who is not. The grounded person listens without fear, speaks without trembling, and answers without hostility. Their presence is a comfort, because they are not trying to extract something from you, they are sharing from the abundance of who they are. The ungrounded person, the one who has not practiced self-love, often turns each exchange into a test, each silence into an accusation, each word into a plea for reassurance. And so communication falters not because love is absent but because love of self is missing. It is not perfection that makes communication flourish. It is not flawless phrasing or polished speech. It is sincerity, born of a spirit at peace with itself. When you have befriended yourself, you do not need to decorate your words with deceit. You can speak plainly, even clumsily, and still be understood, because the heart behind the words carries honesty. And honesty carries more weight than eloquence ever will. Consider how arguments transform when both hearts are rooted in self-love. Instead of battles filled with accusations, the conversation becomes a search for understanding. Instead of "you always" and "you never," the words shift to "I feel," "I need." There is less blame and more clarity, less noise and more truth. For the person who loves themselves does not fear the vulnerability of saying, "This hurt me." They do not mask their pain with anger alone. They can name their emotions, and in naming them they invite healing. In the same way, self-love makes space for forgiveness. If you cannot forgive yourself for your own missteps, you will find it hard to forgive another. You will hold their mistakes like mirrors of your own shame. But if you have learned to show compassion inwardly, you will naturally extend it outwardly. Communication then becomes not a ledger of wrongs but a path back to harmony. Many times relationships falter not because there is a lack of affection but because there is a lack of skill in expressing it. Love unspoken grows heavy. Love unacknowledged grows bitter. Love misunderstood grows weak. Self-love teaches you how to give language to your heart. It gives you courage to say "I love you" without fear, to say "I need you" without shame, to say "I was wrong" without losing your dignity. These words, simple as they are, become bridges when they are spoken from a place of self-respect. There is also a patience that self-love brings to communication. The one who does not love themselves often hurries, afraid that silence is rejection, that delay is abandonment. But the one who trusts their worth can wait. They can allow conversations to unfold, truths to emerge slowly, healing to take time. Their patience becomes a balm, soothing the rough edges of misunderstanding and creating room for connection to deepen. We are all storytellers carrying our histories into the present. Without self-love, those histories dominate our words. Old wounds interrupt current conversations. Past betrayals echo in present silences. A partner says, "I am tired," and the heart hears, "I do not care." A friend forgets to call and the spirit whispers, "You are unworthy." But with self-love, the past does not write today's script. You can hear words as they are spoken, not as they are filtered through old pain. You can respond to the person before you, not the ghosts behind them. There is beauty in realizing that every conversation is an act of creation. Each word builds or breaks, heals or harms, connects or divides. When you approach communication with self-love, you become a careful builder. You weigh not only what you say but how you say it. You understand that tone is as powerful as text, that silence speaks as loudly as speech, that a pause can sometimes carry more tenderness than a paragraph. This attentiveness grows naturally when you treat yourself with care, because the same mindfulness you practice inwardly flows outwardly. The world is filled with voices clamoring to be heard, yet so few truly communicate. To communicate is not to overwhelm, not to dominate, not to perform. It is to connect, and true connection cannot be forced, it must be nurtured. Self-love is the soil in which connection grows. Without it, words wither into manipulation or collapse into silence. With it, words take root and bear fruit: trust, understanding, intimacy. Every relationship, whether with a partner, a friend, or a family member, is tested by the storms of miscommunication. But if you have learned to anchor yourself in love of self, those storms do not uproot you. You bend, you sway, but you do not break. You can return to clarity, return to truth, return to love, because you have built your foundation within. This is the quiet miracle of self-love. It transforms not only the way you see yourself, but the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you dwell with others. It turns ordinary conversations into moments of grace. It allows love not just to be felt but to be spoken, not just to be spoken but to be understood, not just to be understood but to be lived. And so, my friends, let us not forget this simple but mighty truth: the way you speak to yourself becomes the way you speak to the world. When you treat your own soul with tenderness, your words become gentler. When you honor your own worth, your voice becomes stronger. When you forgive yourself, your ears open to forgiveness in others. Self-love is not selfish. It is the seed from which all honest, healing communication grows. Nurture that seed within, and you will find your relationships blossoming with understanding, trust, and harmony. Love yourself first, and your words will carry the power to build bridges where walls once stood, to bring light where silence once lingered, and to call forth love in every heart you touch.